Gojo is regarded as the strongest in his verse, and even in real world today, if you've probably been on this side of YouTube, you probably watched like, can Gojo beat A in a fight? Can Gojo beat B in a fight? Or whoever, just mass him up against some colossal titans throughout fiction. And they're very interesting to me, and I find them very amusing. And I kind of wanted to throw my own hat in the ring, but in a different way. So if you ever watch these kind of who would win versus videos, they kind of boil down to three main things. It has to do with his infinity, which is basically like a barrier for anyone who does it. If you don't know, I don't know why you're watching. But for his infinity, which is like basically a barrier, it's basically can his opponents get through the barrier? If not, then are they able to damage him at all in any other way that some way subverts the barrier? The other two, the last ones are Hollow Purple and Unlimited Void, which are both very broken. Basically, the argument goes, if they can't damage him and he can damage them with some of these two attacks, Hollow Purple, which basically in the show I think it's described as like being able to just destroy matter with whatever it comes in contact with, and Unlimited Void is even more broken than that, because if you are caught within Gojo's domain, basically an infinite amount of information gets flown into your brain, and it leaves you, best case scenario, leaves you immobile. Worst case scenario, just completely fries your brain. Which are great and everything. Those are very important factors to take into fighting with these. But there's a couple of questions that I kind of want answered more concretely. I want to know, basically the four main things I wanted to know is, I wanted to know how strong he is. I want to know how fast he is. I want to know how agile he is. And the last thing is, I want to know how durable he is. And I think I did a good job. I think I might have some pretty convincing answers today, and I'm here to share them. Before we continue any further, the calculations I have done in regards to these four issues, I believe for the strength and the durability sections are spoilers. I mean, everything's a spoiler. Everything from this point on is spoilers. Just if you're an anime only person, don't continue any further. This is as far as you're gonna get without being spoiled. Get out of here. Wait until it's animated or something, or maybe I don't know at that point. But whatever, right? That's what I wanted to figure out, and that's exactly what I'm going to figure out. So I'm gonna show you my thought process. I'm gonna show you how I came to these conclusions, and that's that. Let's start with the one I actually wanted to start with the most, and was strength. I love strength. Strength. How hard can he hit? How strong are his attacks? Can we even find that information? And I think we can. This is actually from the manga, so this is immediately into the spoiler sections. I really wanted to use his 200% Hollow Purple attack, and then calculate how much energy and how much force that attack had, and then just divide it by 2, since he was amped for that 200%. It wasn't all himself. Unfortunately, based on the manga panels that were shown for that 200%, wasn't very good. It didn't show us enough. I couldn't see what effect it had. So I chose the next best thing. And it was actually the last Hollow Purple he's launched in the series so far. This is up to date. So everyone in here should be like okay with spoilers. So yeah, Gojo died after this Hollow Purple. This is the last Hollow Purple he shot in the series. This is when his shot his red and his blue to mix in the air, and that basically detonated and left a huge effective area. Yeah, that's the one I chose, and that's the one we're gonna be calculating. I'm gonna briefly go over some ways I wanted to solve this equation. So first, I wanted to solve it using blast wave decay formulas. Unfortunately, I did do that a couple of times. Unfortunately, the numbers are very unreliable, and the reason this is because blast wave decay formulas are like on a super case-to-case basis. There's a lot of constants which need to be either experimentally found. In the case when I solved them, the values were all assumed. I just chose assumptions, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the answers. It was just all assumptions. It was basically like my headcanon because of all the variables and constants I had to choose. The second one I didn't go through with. That's because I didn't want to be put on like a list. There's like online maps for explosions, and I was gonna, but I didn't. I just I was like, I like my devices. I also like being able to go on vacations and fly airplanes. So yeah, so I chose the next best options and used some pretty standard a different method I use to solve it, which is kind of I'll explain as we go along. So the two panels which are actually shown in the attack, I'm gonna show them here. Here's first is right before the detonation of like the instant before the detonation of the hollow purple. You can kind of see the wave effect already blasting off of it from like its a rupture, its a blast, so to speak. And this second panel shows the after the fact, the devastation left behind. Some notable, like some key points I want to make on this second one is that we should keep in mind that the ground isn't cratered as you would expect like a normal attack, like explosive to do, because in a normal explosive attack, the pressure goes out all directions, leads to a cratering effect. Here, it doesn't really look like anything's cratered. The ground is very flat, so that's just an assumption we'll have for later calculations. And number two is we can see a lot of rubble left behind. That can be due to a lot of things. Different, and we'll talk more about that later. This is just to let you know the assumptions I use for these calculations so far. So let's get into it. First thing we're gonna focus on is the second image. I want to find the total area affected by that, or actually more specifically, I want to find the radius found by that. So what we can do is actually follow the curve of the second image. There's a couple things to keep in mind when I follow this curve. I made the curve slightly smaller and not actually like perfectly aligned with the curve. This is for like two reasons. One, like I want to underestimate a little bit, but two is because of perspective. We're not actually looking at it like head on. So any circle you draw actually has to be angled. I didn't want to deal with that. So I made the circle a little bit smaller to kind of counteract that. It should give us a good enough estimate for what we're doing. There's a building in the background where we can see how many stories it has. This one and the one I chose has 8 stories. Each story is about 4 meters tall. 4 times 8 is 24 meters. That's our ruler. We can use that, overlay them as many times as we can until we get to the center of the circle. Once we do that, we can find out how the radius of the area of effect is, which I came to be about 640 meters. All this, by the way, if you want to check all my math or whatever, it's in a Google Doc down in the description. Go ahead, read it, check it out. I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, I got a radius of 640 meters. So that's very helpful information. Another thing we want to know is the radius of the hollow purple before detonation. We use the exact same thing with a different ruler. In this case, we used 1 story, which is 4 meters, over that whole hollow purple. And we get a radius to be about 24 meters for the hollow purple. Perfect. Now we have radiuses. With radii, we can find the volumes of the area of effect and the hollow purple. Unfortunately, we need to find the pressure. There's a lot of different estimations we can use for this. Let us focus on the second image still, because the pressure is a bit more clear in that one than the first image. The first image, it could be whatever. So the second image, we know the pressure needs to be enough to crumble concrete. The reason I chose concrete is because concrete is like one of the most common material in metropolitan areas. Think of it like roads are made of concrete. A lot of buildings have concretes in them. Concrete is just apparent everywhere. So that's the one I used. We want to find the pressure it needs to break concrete. Now that is kind of a challenging question, because the strength of any material changes depending on its processing. If you've ever taken a structural or behavioral materials class, you can understand this processing changes it. So I actually looked for like real life concrete pulverizers. They're actual machines that are used to break apart concrete. They're in a range. I believe they were anywhere from like 4,000 to 5,000 psi. I split the difference and I made it 4,500 psi, or 31 megapascals of pressure. And that one's an assumption, of course, because we can see from the second image that not all the concrete is pulverized perfectly, but that's why we split the difference. So maybe the ones that are left behind are the higher ultimate compressive strength um, concretes. So 31 megapascals of pressure is a good estimate. So we're gonna assume, here's the first assumption we're gonna make. This assumption isn't actually too bad. Generally, when you have a blast wave, the pressure is higher at the origin of the blast, and as the distance increases, the pressure decreases. But we're going to assume a uniform pressure. So instead of being like 31 megapascals at the edge and having it increase as it comes to the origin, we're just gonna have the whole thing be 31 megapascals. Makes life simpler. Makes life so much simpler. Next thing we want to do is find the volume of the attack. Why? Give me a second. Why do we want to do that? So we can find energy. Energy equals pressure times volume. I chose a volume of half a sphere or a hemisphere, if you want to be nerd about it. So a hemisphere, the reason I chose that was because the ground isn't cratered in. I didn't want it to be like a whole circle about it. It just looks like it just came up like that. Half a sphere. It was fine for my calculations. If you don't like it, you can double the volume for your own calculations, whatever. So we have now the volume of the area effect, which is 4 over 6 pi r cubed. We can multiply that by the 31 megapascals. The R in this case is 640 meters. That gives us an energy of 1.7 times 10 to the power of 16 joules. That might not sound like anything to most of us, and I didn't know what the fuck like that was, but that was equivalent to about 4 megatons of TNT. A lot of TNT. But that's just for the area of effect. I want to find the force that the hollow purple had, right? So if anyone was to experience the pressure or the force from this hollow purple, what would it be? Well, we can use Boyle's law or ideal gas law, whichever you want to use it as. But basically, the P1 V1 equals P2 V2. Once we solve for the since we know the volume of the hollow purple, that one's a full sphere, and we know the pressure and the volume. We just calculated those. We can solve for the pressure of the hollow purple. That gives a pressure of 2.94 times 10 to the 11 pascals. Multiply it by the outer surface area of the hollow purple. That gives a force of the hollow purple to be 2.13 times 10 to the power of 15 newtons. I assume the force is, or the pressure is constant throughout the hollow purple. So there's no like place in the hollow purple where it has more pressure than another spot in the hollow purple. So that gives a uniform force of 2.13 times 10 to the power of 15 newtons. A lot. So that's a lot of energy. We've calculated his energy to be about 4 megatons of TNT, and his force to be about that number, the big ass number I just said. There's a couple notes we want to make with this calculation. One is that hollow purple works in a way to either atomize things or dematerialize things. So it's not a blast wave or a force wave in a conventional sense like an explosion is. This is just an idea of the force and energy needed to require what his hollow purple was able to accomplish. A note too is this is the force of his hollow purple attack, or the equivalent of it. This isn't an indication of Gojo's punching strength. So his strongest attack can't be like related to be as strong as his punch. For a rule of thumb, if you want to say his punches are a fraction of this force, for example, the force we just calculated, if we took 1/1,000,000th of this force, it would still be 2,130,000 newtons. So that just gives an idea of how strong his punches are if they were 1/1,000,000th a fraction of what his hollow purple is. So that was strength. A lot came out of my mouth. I'm sure it was hard to follow. I'll edit some like formulas in this so you can see the thought process, because saying numbers, it just goes weird. But next we'll get to speed. Speed is a little contentious, and I'll get to why a little bit later, but let's just show you my thought process before we go to other people's thought processes. We can use, so for speed, I actually used Toji speed in this first battle with Gojo for my calculations. This is because it's the easiest to use. Gojo is way stronger than Toji. Let's just get that off the board. It wouldn't be unfair to say that Gojo's speed is miles ahead of Toji's, but for a rule of thumb, I think it's not too bad to say. If you want to find Toji speed and multiply it by however many times you think Gojo is stronger than Toji, fine by me. So let's go. We have 2 frames from, this one's actually animated, so we can use a bunch of timing, like real world timing and things like that. So we can use these 2 frames here. I used the actual shot. This is just the 2 frames I'm going to show you. One is to show that Gojo is standing in a kind of, not an open field, but in a long array. We can see that Toji, the building he just crashed into, extends farther than what we see on screen. We're going to assume that distance is twice as much as what we see on screen. Reason is because we can measure that distance since we know Gojo's height. We can measure the distance shown on screen. We can double it just because we know it's further. We don't know exactly how much further. We could probably use some peripheral calculation or some perspective calculations. Let's just double it. I'm sure we'll get like something close anyways. But we know that Toji had to cross his distance. He crossed the whole thing. It appears he moved in a linear path. So this is one of the best ways to calculate his speed. So he crossed his distance. We know the height of Gojo to be about, he's 6'3" actually. So he's 1.9 meters tall. Once we overlay his height over the distance, multiply by 2, that creates a total distance of about 60 meters, 58.9 meters to be exact. He's about 60 meters, well, 58.9 meters. With the stopwatch in the anime, because it wasn't slowed down, and you could argue that it was slowed down, but I'm sure he just crossed it in like a tenth of a second, in 0.1 seconds. I timed it a few times, and I got a bunch of like, I got like, maybe one time I got like 0.8, and the other time I got like 1.3 or something. I just, right in the middle, 0.1 seconds. That's how long it took. Well, we can just use distance divided by time and see that he has a speed of 589 meters per second. Considering the speed of sound is 343 meters per second, he is almost twice as fast as the speed of sound. He's about 1.72 times faster than the speed of sound, to be exact. But it's very fast. I want to make this very clear. Gojo is way faster than Toji. He may have gotten bodied in this fight. That was because he was this was pre-awakening, and adult Gojo is like however many years in the future. He's unlocked his domain. He's just way more stronger than he is in this fight. So Gojo is many times faster than Toji is. Also, in the end, there's a manga panel where it says Awakened Maki was fighting someone who reached the speed of Mach 3. So it's kind of close to what we got. They can move at about Mach 3 levels. And I'd say that's pretty consistent with the show. There's a few other outliers. And I do want to say outliers because Maki did catch a bullet in the, like, right in front of her face, like, in the first season. But that's an outlier because no one's really shown that kind of speed so far. And it's kind of taken back because if she was able to move at those speeds, incredible speeds, way faster than Mach 3 to be able to accomplish what she did, if she's able to accomplish those speeds before she even like fully restricted herself, in terms of heavily restriction, but then was able to got much stronger and much faster later in the season and then was able to move Mach 3, we just consider that outlier information, not actually evident of what the show is trying to tell or the level the characters are at. Speaking on that, I've seen a lot of people say that they are lightning speed, and this is because, oh my god, I'm brain farting. Because they've had like the reaction speed of some lightning, or the lightning was shot out of his nose. Oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. Where he was like able to react, like to divert the lightning out of his nose. Sure, I guess. If you want to say that they are as fast as the leading bolt of lightning, that's about it ranges from 89,000 meters per second to 120,000 meters per second. You want to call it 100,000 meters per second, go ahead. But that makes them 290 times the speed of sound, way farther than than Mach 3 basically. But that's just like a rule of thumb. If you want to use that lightning reaction, lightning movement speed as like a whatever that was something that they're capable of doing, they're about 100,000 meters per second. That's kind of their speed. But that. Oh, I also do want to note that Gojo can teleport. So that was kind of cheap for me to put it that yeah, he can teleport. He can travel any distance he wants at any speed, whatever. But one thing we have to know is that running speed or things like that don't really matter as much. In a fight, something that's we're not just any fight. Any sport actually is agility, maneuverability. These are all other words for acceleration. How fast can they snap? How fast can they go from nothing to everything? Turn directions. Everything you need for a fighting basis. And that's kind of what I want to figure out. For this, I continued using the numbers. I have my calculator here. I guess I'll just go really fast. But we're using Toji again. Same notes are from previous. Gojo is faster than Toji. He probably accelerates faster than Toji. So any number we get for Toji, multiply it by however many times you think Gojo is stronger. This is nothing but a rule of thumb. Something is like if you want to point to a concrete like fact in the show that this is it. And we're using Toji a lot because Gojo doesn't really run. We don't really see him moving a lot, and he doesn't really fight people who have been shown movements like Toji has movements, right? So we're using Toji. He's just super safe to use. What we used. It's kind of hard to actually use Toji's acceleration because a lot of his movements are shown in slow motion so that we can actually see what the fuck he's doing. And we don't want that. We want it to be in a real-time speed. And one scene I think encapsulates this perfectly is when he kills Granny Ogami. I think that's what her name was. Well, that gives us everything we need because looking at that scene, if we use... if we use the knowledge we used previously of how fast Toji can move versus how long it took him from being to a complete standstill to reaching his, what we will assume to be his top speed, and then decelerating back to a complete standstill to reach her location, we can find his acceleration and deceleration. We're going to assume that they're the same. Like however fast he can accelerate is the same value that he can decelerate. Which is, that's not far-fetched. So after watching this scene, I measured it with the stopwatch a few times. I got a few different values. It's really hard to get like an exact number, but on average, I got about half a second or 0.5 seconds, right? Assuming that he reaches the maximum speed that he's going, 0.5 seconds for the whole trip, but to keep that in mind. Halfway, we want to assume that he reaches his top speed, and at the midpoint, he begins slowing down. So divide that in half, that's a quarter of a second or 0.25 seconds. Assuming he reached the top speed we calculated for earlier, which was 589 meters per second. We divide that by a quarter of a second or 0.25 seconds. He's accelerating and decelerating with an acceleration of 2,356 meters per second. And remember, that's with what number I got. He was stated to reach Mach 3. I might calculate. I didn't do this earlier. I'm kind of an idiot. He was stated to move Mach 3 if we were to measure him with Mach-E, because they're about the same everything. Mach-E is able to move at 1,029 meters per second. Divide that by a quarter a second. Their acceleration speeds are 4,116 meters per second squared. And then these get even crazier if we assume the lightning speed. You can do that on your own time. I personally think it might be a little far-fetched. I'd have to see more examples of them being able to move that fast before I take it as anything other than an outlier. But you can do it. You can do it. Because I don't know the story like the back of my hand, so there probably are. But that's something I want to put him on. Keep in mind, these are Toji speeds. Gojo is probably much better in this regard at him too. And finally, this video is taking a while. I know, but we're on the last section here, and this is durability. And this is the hardest one of all four of them, because very rarely does Gojo ever get hit. He doesn't get hit by just about anyone in the series. There's only the beginning of the series, in the first season, he's fought Jogo. Jogo is very powerful. He's about 9 fingers Sukuna level. The Jogo didn't even get to touch him. In the second season, they could not fight him. They had to seal him because they just could not. Even when his Infinity was down because of domain expansion or whatever, he still wasn't getting touched by the disaster curses. He got sealed, he comes out, he fights Sukuna, and now he actually starts taking some damage. But just because he hasn't shown to take many hits throughout the show, doesn't mean he has some weak-ass durability. Gojo is very resilient. So Gojo is very resilient. He's shown it throughout most of the series. Gojo's just, that was just a point to say that Gojo's Infinity takes the brunt of like most of his punishments. The only way to actually hit him is to have, through like obscure circumstances, like domain expansion / amplification, inverted sphere of heaven, and Sukuna's reality cut. But Gojo, like I said earlier, he's no slouch. He did fight against Sukuna. Well, actually not just Sukuna. He fought against Sukuna and Mahoraga. And he's actually taken the brunt of Sukuna's cleave and dismantle. Of course, he did take damage and he had to regenerate. But that's crazy to think about if you think about it. So we're gonna have to use we're gonna have to use Sukuna, because Sukuna's actually been like one of the few people who can hit him throughout the show. So this is where we're gonna have to use a little bit of scaling. So Sukuna was stronger than Gojo. I know. It hurts to say. It does hurt to say, because I'm a coper, right? But for the purposes of this discussion, let's fall into reality for a second. Sukuna was stronger than Gojo. He wanted to learn how to bypass his infinity. That's why he kind of had to take longer than it needed to. But yeah, Sukuna was stronger than Gojo. But we can't say that it was like a no diff. It was a hard fought battle. Gojo and Sukuna are on about the same playing field, even though I do believe that in reality Sukuna is greater than Gojo. But that makes life a lot easier for us. If they're relative, we can just copy the strength section of Gojo and just apply it to Sukuna, because they're on about the same level. They are both able to give out punches. They're both able to take each other's punches and have like the same reactions to them essentially. So now that we've calculated Gojo's strength, applied them to Sukuna, and we know that Gojo has taken a lot of punishment from Sukuna, we can find a range for his durability. For example, Gojo's punching force, like we can have the lower bound be Gojo's punching force, which if you want to take the 1/1 billionth fraction I used earlier, or about 2,130,000 newtons, that can be the lower end, or whatever fraction you can give it. Just take 2.313 times 10 to the 15 newtons, multiply by whatever fraction, and get whatever your personal headcanon is. At maximum, and I do mean like at maximum, the higher end is what we calculated for like what his purple was able to do it. It's unclear if he could actually take that much force. The only reason, I think it was stated, the only reason that Gojo was just like kind of fine by being like in the midst of his attack was because it was like his own cursed energy and it doesn't affect him as much as it affected Sukuna, who's like an external party from this attack. But you could make the argument. You could make the argument that he could take his own attack, assuming that his output is just as good as his input. Whatever. But do keep in mind that even though like this is like his durability is like not standard, because he has a healing factor. So whatever damage he takes, he can heal it with his RCT. really fast. His RCT healing isn't instant, but it's so fast that you may mistake it for instant. It is like one of the fastest healings in the entire show. Other than that, that's kind of the values I got for Gojo. I think I've developed a good argument for strength, a good argument, maybe not for Toji's speed. Then you can relate Toji's speed to Gojo's speed based on whatever multiplier. Same thing goes for his acceleration with whatever multiplier you think. And maybe if you think that lightning is a thing, go ahead. You know what I mean? Whatever. And then his durability. I think those two have been those four have been very fleshed out. I think they're very good. Just to say that, and this is all just a Gojo glazing session. He's the GOAT. He's fucking awesome. That being said, even with these calculated, we do have to mention some weaknesses, because I don't want people to just take these numbers and use them for whatever argument they have. Just because these numbers are fantastic and his abilities are broken doesn't mean he's impervious to anyone. He can lose. He has lost. So let's just list some of his weaknesses to balance out a lot of the glazing we did in this show. So let's just list them out real quick and then we're finished. So his weaknesses are he can be sealed. He was sealed in the prison realm. If you match him up against someone who has some sort of sealing technique, Gojo is susceptible to sealings and he can be taken down. It is stated that the prison realm is like one of the strongest sealing. It's not the only sealing method in JJK. It's one of, if not the strongest sealing method. Because I think it was implied that like you need a really strong sealing to keep him, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he can be sealed with a strong enough sealing technique. Negation techniques, that are able to bypass or shut off his infinity. He can be damaged. He can heal, but he can be damaged if you are over the ranges of Gojo's durability, which we stated in this video. Negating his technique of infinity can be done with specific tools like the inverted spear of heaven, Sukuna's spatial slash, which is like it's a hack that bypasses a hack. Basically, those are the two main ones that come to my head right now. A big weakness he has actually having to fight around others, specifically innocents or allies. This is actually how the disaster curses, they were able to survive for so long when they fought him in Shibuya. They just forced him to hold back due to like all the innocents in the area. Even when he was fighting Sukuna, they were just basically don't go help him fight Sukuna. You're gonna get in his way. And that assumption was proven to be true, although it didn't amount to much. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe he can come back. So having him to fight with people like he just doesn't want to hurt really holds him back a lot. And then the final concrete one is that he is still human, so he can succumb to potent poisons or illnesses that overwrite or work faster than his RCT can, or also like health complications, things like heart attacks. So I'm thinking if Light wrote his name in the death book, in the death note, Gojo would just fall dead, and etc. Whatever else humans can die from that he can't overpower with his healing. That will kill him. And this last weakness is pure speculation. In fact, it's not even my idea, but just because it's not my idea doesn't mean I don't love the idea. In fact, I'm gonna quote it right now. The person who brought this idea up to me was the YouTuber Six Paths. I don't know. He's friends with Swag Kage. You should totally find him or whatever. He's a super chill guy. But this is his idea, and I never thought about it this way, but it might be that Gojo's infinity does not negate everything. It has limits to how much it can negate. So essentially the argument, if I'm remembering this correctly, maybe I'm totally misremembering this, but is that if the infinity is overpowered by an attack past a certain threshold in power, then the attack may be able to bypass infinity. This is an example of this was, this can be argued against different ways, But in that final attack that we used for the strength calculation, that the the blue and the red combining, the hollow purple detonating, he did actually receive damage from that blast after using it. I think that was the one. He did receive damage, and that's kind of weird since his infinity should have been on. There's two ways to kind of argue this. Like either A, he didn't have his infinity on, or B, that the fact that it was his own like cursed energy allowed it to bypass. But again, this last one is speculation. This one's not a concrete weakness. But I'm just saying, like, what if Thanos, with all the Infinity Stones, was able to launch an attack that was so powerful that it could buy, I don't know, something, you know what I mean? Anyways, yeah, if you want to check any of my work or look at all the references I had, I guess the doc is in the description. I did put a lot of work, not that much work. I put in a bit of work, a bit of thought, a bit of thinking into this video. If you liked it, let me know. If you want me to do more or with like a different character or anything really, I'm fine to do it. Other than that, like, have a good day. Peace out.